So Dave, if you were going to join a cult, would you rather it be about agriculture or aliens? Because I
Oh,
mean,
aliens.
those are your two options, generally speaking.
Aliens.
Aliens.
Now, do I have to like worship plants or aliens? Is that the question or?
Well, you would probably end up doing a lot of farm work on the agriculture one and worshiping, pagan gods. Although you also might end up doing a lot of farm work on the other one as well. It really depends on where you're situated. But yeah, I think that in the other one you would be worshiping aliens.
I definitely am not interested in farm work.
Well, that is
Um,
the downside to joining cults in general, is that there is a lot of like hard labor involved. It seems like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'm not down with that. Aliens, though, maybe the aliens have some kind of like technology
yeah.
and
So your premise with joining the cult is that you're going to pick the most realistic option. Like
no,
you're gonna bet on aliens because maybe they do exist and maybe they'll bring something better to you.
yeah, that's the whole point of it, isn't it?
Welcome to the First Picture Show, an ongoing series where we discuss horror and thrillers from all of your favorite streaming platforms and anything else we damn well please. I'm Godfather of Soul, Jason Monet. I'm here with critic extraordinaire David Joseph. Hi Dave, how's it going this week?
Yeah, it's not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm freaking sick, and it doesn't feel good, but I'm here for the fans.
You look good, though. You look
Thank
good.
you. Do I look the best I've ever looked? That's the important thing.
Yeah, every show, every show,
That's
it's getting
good. Maybe
better.
this will take off a few pounds. There's always
What?
some good benefits to the sickness.
I think the next show is the one you do shirtless.
I don't want to threaten you with that, but yeah, now that you've put it out there, I guess it'll have to happen. All right, let's get into it. So, Apostle, it has been said that, baby, you gotta have faith, the faith of faith. But what if that means volunteering for hard labor and bloodletting rituals? Apostle follows a troubled ex-priest and is deeply furrowed brow as he leaves turn-of-the-century London to infiltrate a mysterious cult on a remote Welsh island in search of his kidnapped sister. What he finds is a failing agrarian society that feels less like a promised utopia and more like a Dark Ages Ren fair with a mysterious supernatural force at its center. So, Dave, what'd you think?
I enjoyed this one. This is a fun watch for me.
Well, that's good. I think for me it was good enough, is what I would say. I don't think it
Okay.
was like top list for me, but I think that it was a relatively satisfying, slow burn. And it just didn't quite nail the landing for me, but maybe I went in with high expectations based on a few things I knew about it ahead of time. Those two things specifically are the fact that it was directed by Gareth Evans, who's
Hmm.
directed some of my favorite action movies, at least in the last couple of years of the Raid series. And also that it stars Dan Stevens, who was also a great psychopathic star of another, I think, mutual favorite movie of ours from a few years ago called The Guest. So,
Yes.
right, putting those two things together, I kind of expected, I think, maybe something more out of this than I got, but that's also me. I mean, I have such high hopes for everything. I'm just constantly judging left and right.
Yeah, and it's. I think it's maybe something you should let go because you don't usually like things. I
So, what
mean,
was it? What specifically was it about it that that drew you in?
I thought there were. The whole the premise. I definitely. I did not. It got me like I didn't know where this was going, and I was like, what is this, and what is happening? And then finally when I saw it I was like, that maybe I'm just slow, but when
No.
we find out what the monster is, what the bad thing is, I was definitely surprised by that.
Ah, were you
um
surprised because it ended up being a supernatural element, or were you surprised because you were not expecting a legitimate sort of, I guess, monster, you could say?
right, I was definitely going down the wrong road. I was thinking some occulty kind of thing. I was kind of thinking it was going to go like kind of like The Witch, um, and it's not like that at all. And I thought that there were some pretty menacing bad guys.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this movie, a lot of people are going to talk about like how it refers or how it alludes to a Wicker Man. I mean, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of like
Hmm.
crossover there with both like the plot and the setting and the overall sort of big idea about a agriculturally driven cult that's on a remote island that seems to have a weird set of rules. It was nice to see how the cult itself was also kind of messed up. Like it was nice to see that the cult had its own dynamic that was sort of cracking and falling apart, and it wasn't so much because of some sort of bigger supernatural force as much as like these people who were legitimately just trying to make their lives work, bumping up against this sort of ultimatum that a supernatural force had given them.
Yeah, and it definitely the characters were a little more complex than I was expecting. I think you had gradations of really horrible, and then there were bad guys that you could see where it all went wrong, um, and I liked the kind of there's the complexity there. It's real easy for a movie like this to just kind of have horrible, detestable, and then pure as the driven snow.
Right. I think one of the things the movie did have working for itself was that all the characters were somewhat complicated and complex, like you were saying, as opposed to just sort of stereotypes of brainless cult members. You got to see into some of their lives a little bit more than others, but they all ended up having some sort of either redeemable or at least understandable qualities to them in terms of what drove them to be there to begin with, and what drives them to take on sort of heinous acts in the name of trying to save their society. And that's interesting. I mean, that's something that I don't think you would necessarily see in other kind of movies of this sort. I think it's really easy for cult movies to sort of just go deeper into making people weird and leaving that to be kind of the fun, mysterious part of it. But in this situation, I think because you're meeting these people that are sort of desperate to figure out the right thing to do, it just gives you more meat to chew on with this. And I think it also produced better performances because of that. I think, like, for instance, I really like the fact that Dan Stevens, who is the main character in this, his character, Thomas Richardson, is a complicated guy. I mean, he is sort of, he's and he's mysterious and he lurks a lot, but you also kind of understand that he's been dealing with PTSD ultimately, and it sort of informs the way that he approaches everything else around him, which is a nice added texture. It wasn't just the fact that he's like trying to be serious; it's that he's also a guy in the middle of struggling against a lot of different factors from his past. Michael Sheen, who
Hmm.
is the cult leader in this, who was I think the cult leader's name is Michael Howe. Is that right? I think that's right. He at first, of course, by being a cult leader, you assume that he's just a nut, and then as the movie progresses, you understand that there's actually more behind what he's doing, and he's actually not necessarily a bad person. He's just trying to make it work. So, I think that extra level of sort of seeing humanity trying to deal with what they've stumbled into accidentally makes the movie much more interesting than your standard kind of cult like film.
Yeah, Michael Sheen is the Prophet Malcolm.
Malcolm. Okay, that would make more sense. There was a nice kind of sort of I guess a heavy sense of tension that pervaded the movie as we tried to figure out what was both going on and also watch Dan Stevens' character, Thomas Richardson, navigate being this infiltrator in secret. There was a lot of I think a lot of fun watching him sort of be clever enough to get in and out of little tricks here and there, uh, but also you're always just waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other, I, I think he was well. I mean, self-medicating, right? I mean, he was probably. I'm assuming that was some sort of opioid he was.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Um, and I thought that was going to come into play a little bit more. I guess it probably does more subtly, but I thought it was gonna. I thought we were going to see him straight up withdraw.
hmm
Um, and that didn't happen. I mean, I like this movie a lot, and I'm stretching for quibbles.
Well, it's interesting because I do think that that's a valid point. I think in some ways this movie was ambitious with the way that it was trying to develop all these different characters at the same time. And if anything, I think my strongest criticism is probably the fact that it got kind of bogged down in subplots.
Hmm.
and some of them didn't really go anywhere that interesting, and some of them just really didn't have any kind of end to them whatsoever. There were so many plots to keep a hold of at one time, especially in basically the second act in the middle of this movie. There wasn't that much going on in terms of the actual overall bigger idea, the bigger plot, and the bigger supernatural part. There was more going on in terms of seeing interpersonal relationships develop, and that was okay. But at the same time, I'm like, there was so much going on in this movie. I kind of wish maybe they had actually gone back into the more supernatural elements and the scarier elements, and also like maybe some more actiony elements.
Yeah.
I guess in some ways, I feel like I wish that they would have gone into more of the background of the pagan god specifically. I mean, they sort of alluded to the idea that there had been, a population there for a while that had dealt with this from the cave, drawings that I saw at one point. But they never really kind of went too far with it. I mean, I think in some ways it's kind of a shame that this supernatural element ended up being sort of, put away in a barn, literally, for most of the movie, and you never really got a chance to see it kind of do its thing. There was one scene where Thomas Richardson is walking through a tunnel underground and he comes across basically a ghost, I think. And it seems like that was an interesting cue towards something bigger and supernatural that didn't quite pan out later on.
Yeah, they didn't do much with that. You're right.
It was just another kind of strand that was sort of left twisting a little bit. And I guess I feel like I would have liked to have seen more of those things explored and less of like teenage romances explored.
Well, I mean that storyline was annoying, but I thought it paid off. I didn't
Maybe
see.
did it pay off because it was annoying? What was the payoff
Well,
thing?
I mean, it definitely developed into something. Well, I mean, which is something not as you pointed out. They don't all in this film turn into something.
No, no.
My issue with that storyline is everybody pretends to believe the guy when he comes out, but I mean, who's believing that? Like that kid did that. So I'll set it up for people's. Uh, you know, obviously, we've spoiled things like crazy, but this is big. This is a big spoiler. Uh, this girl's pregnant. He's upset because that's his daughter, and she's not married, and she's pregnant, and he doesn't like the guy that got her pregnant. So he kills her, takes the baby out of her, and then frames this kid. And the father is this nebbish, afraid of his own shadow, weakling, that everyone just buys. Him having committed this murder, and to the point where they side with this new villain over the guy who's already in charge of the village.
Right.
That didn't entirely work for me the way that all went down.
I guess I would say people. It seemed like they were setting up to suggest that people understood that the society itself was trying to break down, and they were just looking for strong leadership. And you could say that it was a metaphor for our modern times, in a way.
I mean that. Sure. I mean they get behind. Yeah. I mean people get a little upset and worried, so they get behind a raving lunatic moron. Uh,
Yeah, and then we all get our heads screwed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. I mean, now I guess it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that the death that you alluded to, it happens off screen, and I don't know how you felt about it, but to me, it's one of the things I would say that is something I didn't like about this movie. It's in the bad camp.
Hmm.
It just felt like it was a little rough around the edges that it happened off screen after all this kind of build up for something else. After all this build up for like I think a real sort of confrontation between like the teenage couple themselves and their parents or whatever. It just seemed a little odd to me that it was taken care of off camera. How did you feel about that?
Well, you wanted to go full on Terrifier and see the deed go down.
Well, what were they hiding? I mean, it was a horror movie. It was trying to be horrific. It was trying to show this person's unhinged. I mean, I don't really understand why it had to take.
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah.
like it
I
didn't
mean,
go undiscovered for a long time. It was discovered almost immediately after the scene, I guess, theoretically happened. So,
they showed they showed the aftermath, which was pretty gruesome. Um, I mean, that's a tough scene to shoot.
That's a tough scene to shoot. Not the
I mean,
scene where
just
they
the
strap down the kid and drill through his head.
well, even that. It's oh yeah, it's way tougher than that. I would think. You don't think?
I don't know. I mean, I think that they could have led to it a little bit stronger than they did.
Because they brained that kid. I mean, that kid's like semi-comatose or whatever. She would have been. That would have been. Oh, ooh, that would have been tough.
So
I
you're
hate to
happy
do
they
it.
skipped it.
Obviously, I mean, they did way worse in Terrifier.
Yeah.
But it would have. That would have been really ratcheting it up. Um,
I think, from my point of view, because I knew it was Gareth Evans doing this, I kept waiting for the moment when Dan Stevens was going to break out kung fu. Because, I mean, the guy is very sulky. He's very, like, quiet and mysterious. But you also know that his past was in China. So I kept waiting for this moment where, like, where all of a sudden, like, he'd be involved in action sequences and he would totally become absolutely kick-ass and just, like, completely, kick everybody's ass. I feel
yeah.
like Gareth Evans did this in some ways to kind of get away from doing that kind of movie. I think that this is this was a point in transition for him that he was trying to prove that he could also make other types of genre picks and make them well and do them effectively. And I think he just succeeded in doing that. I mean, I think that I think I enjoyed some of his other films more compared to this, but I also feel like this is a very solid film. And it's nice to see him get out and stretch his legs and do some other stuff. So, like, I've read interviews with him now where he said definitively he's not going back to the Raid series. I think in some ways maybe he's trying to distance himself from being the king of action, or at least the king of, like, fight movies, so that he can really kind of expand his his abilities. And I give him a lot of credit for that. This is just purely speculation on my part. I have no idea what he's actually up to, but it's
Yeah, I
cool that
mean,
he's
and
doing it.
that begs the next question: Are they gonna pick up the Raid without him, or are they
I
just
don't
gonna let?
know. I really, really want there to be a third Raid. It really kills me if he doesn't make it. But what are you gonna do?
I I would think that there's too much money there.
I don't know. I mean, the main actors have certainly moved on. They're in a lot of other other big movies at this point, and a lot of those the same choreographers and stuff have kind of moved on as well. So I don't know. Maybe everybody's kind of moving on from it. But
They're still making Tremors movies, dude. They can make Raid movies with
boy,
different.
are they actually making Tremors movies?
One came out on May 1st.
Oh, really? Did it?
Um, I am way behind in the Tremors universe. I need to get caught up. I've never seen a Tremors movie I didn't like. I know we've gone far afield now, but
Yeah. Well, if they had actually managed to reunite the original cast like they were planning to, I would have loved to have seen that happen. Because that was in the
oh
works.
yeah,
That would have been amazing. It's really a shame that nobody picked it up. But again, nobody picked up Tremors. No, I don't know what's going to happen with Raid 3. So we'll have to rely on Gareth Evans to keep supplying some good horror, perhaps, good thrillers. I mean, who knows where he'll go next? I could see him vying to do a Bond film at some point. I mean, it certainly would be a direct line to that.
oh 100%. Yeah, I mean that. It's almost a travesty if he doesn't get a chance. I think that there was a Bond moment in this film.
Uh,
I think that you had the moment where the villain
uh,
catches people and talks about the slow torture that's going to happen and dumps a whole bunch of exposition.
yes.
uh, and then then all hell breaks loose and there's an escape and
Yeah, right. The villain, the guy walks away,
yeah.
and yeah,
Now here's the thing: if you're chained to a wall, okay, and you get your hands on a gun, um, why aren't you maybe shoot the chain? Like why are you just shoot?
but
I
that's
mean, she
not.
shoots like a big hole in the wall and then starts trying to yank stone out of the wall, which does somehow work. But
Wait, were you going back to the Bond thing for a second? Were you going
yeah,
to? I thought maybe you were going towards a not a golden eye, Goldfinger moment, with Dan Stevens on the table there.
whoa, yeah, that's good. That's another good point.
So, going back to this movie for a minute, Apostle, uh, what do you think happened at the end?
I think that I don't think it's super ambiguous, but maybe I'm wrong. I think that the Earth, whatever the land, trapped him, and he's gonna be the new monster
Okay.
that grows the plants. Is that what you were thinking, or?
Well, it's funny because I didn't really get it while I was watching it, but then later on I thought, I guess that's what's going on to happen with that. I didn't really think about it that hard. In some ways, I feel like it happened quickly, but also, I wasn't really sure if it was just him being like swallowed up, or if it's him being sort of remade into this, this new god for the island.
But is there anyone left behind to feed him?
Michael Sheen's character is still there, right?
Yes, and then the Mark Lewis Jones is Quinn, uh, and he's the. Am I getting that right, or is it? Okay, and who's Ian Helfin? Uh,
He's a bell ringer, according to IMDb.
Bell ringer. What the fuck's... Okay.
I don't know. They all look vaguely English. It's really hard to tell them apart, right? I mean, all kind of.
Do you think that they were intentionally, I almost said planting the seed,
Yeah, yeah.
for for a sequel? I mean, like they definitely left the door open for that.
Maybe. I mean, Gareth Evans wrote and directed this, so I guess it's kind of up to him in some ways. I mean, maybe he was thinking about trying to develop this further on down the line.
In a lot of ways, it doesn't feel like a franchise, but they definitely left the door open. So
Yeah, I buy that. They left the door open, and in a lot of ways, I wish that it had been more of a series to begin with than an actual movie.
hmm.
I feel like the content was there and sort of the pacing was there for it to have been a pretty good like 10 episode series on Netflix. Like I would have
Yeah,
liked to have seen that happen because I think that would have given them more time to really kind of explore both the grotesque and the horror elements and the character development, and it probably would have been a little bit more satisfying. I don't, maybe we're just so spoiled with all this like rich content these days that 2 hour movies are just not really cutting it anymore unless they're really boiled down to simple elements.
well, I think there's no question that television is more culturally relevant, and I think maybe the baseline of television is higher, at least fiction. Um, well, at least what's marketed is fiction.
Yeah,
A lot of what isn't is actual also fiction. Like a lot the reality television, in quotes. Um, but I for whatever reason the movies have always been more interesting to me. Um, but I'm not gonna deny the power of television in today's society. It's just
as always, I ask, would we have survived this scenario?
uh all right. So we're Dan Stevens, or are
No, I
we?
think that we're just common people. I mean, unless you have some special abilities that I don't know about, or perhaps a really dangerous past that I haven't been
I
told of.
feel like maybe we're getting fed to the plant. That's my concern.
Oh, really?
Uh,
You think so? I don't feel like. I mean, it seemed to me in the movie, it wasn't necessarily that he was feeding cult members to the plant. I mean, it seemed like they were feeding whatever they could to like they were feeding people that maybe they had kidnapped, like Dan Stevens' character's sister. But even then, it seemed like that was a last ditch sort of effort. It seemed to me like they were mostly relying on the bloodletting to.
well, that's what I meant. I mean, like I feel like we're gonna be just kind of laying in the corner, uh,
But
getting
I mean,
bled.
like being a little anemic is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Like I mean, trying to farm and also having a lot of blood loss is probably an issue for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, like it's not such a bad handoff really or
Like
deal
I
with
mean,
a
it's
pagan
a
god if
better
it's just like a little bit of blood. I mean,
it's a better fate than being dinner at the end of Drifter, or
yeah,
just being pretty much anyone in Terrifier.
that's true. Everybody, and also I would point out that it seemed like almost everyone lived in this movie. I think we make it. I think that we're just people that are like, yeah, we're there, and we're probably weak, but then we just shuffle to the boats and we're done at the end. I mean, I think this is a really easy movie for like a casual observer to survive in.
I feel like I'm definitely I'm gonna drop a couple lbs.
Well,
You
all
know,
that good outside air, working outside in the fields,
right? Bleeding.
bleeding.
Yeah,
Some people pay for that treatment. I mean, that's just
it's a good point.
there are spas that focus on this.
And if you think about it, I don't my medical history. Maybe this is way past. In 1905, probably they had gone probably a couple hundred years beyond bleeding people, huh?
Well, I mean, this was definitely a throwback society, so maybe they felt like it was all part of the process. Do you have any other things to pick in terms of the bad stuff? I mean, do you have anything else? I know you were having a hard time thinking of criticisms when we were talking about this earlier, but are there other things
No,
that,
I
that
mean
you quibble with?
that was one of them. My little quibble with that one particular shot, and then yeah. So I mean, I've covered everything. For the most part, I really liked this movie. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes. Doesn't feel
Hmm.
overly long.
No,
So I think it's paced pretty well. I could see it's way longer than any of the other movies we've done.
this is true. Although it did not feel like it was.
No, I mean it felt shorter than Drifter.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess I would say that I thought the pacing was a little off, again in the second act as it meandered for all these subplots. But maybe again that was also because I was expecting something to happen, something bigger to happen. But I understood that they were building the storylines and doing the right things to make a climactic ending. It just felt like I kept waiting for them to snap back to the bigger picture, and it took a little while for them to get there. Um, and I mean, I guess I would say that's one of the things that maybe irks me a little bit about this movie. That and the fact that I feel like it never really got that crazy. I feel like it could have been a little bit more. It could have had a bigger finish. It could have had maybe a little bit more blood to it. It could have been a little darker, I guess, in some ways. I mean, it didn't. It definitely felt PG-13ish to me. It felt a little made for TV movie ish to me at times. In terms of good things, though, I did like the production value of it, even though if I'm saying it felt a little made for TV movie ish.
I thought some of the shot selections and framing was interesting. So I just think that the movie's just well made all around. I thought.
Yeah, I think that the movie actually looked very good, which certainly helps to make the movie feel more serious and more thought out than some of the other ones. Were there specific scenes that you were thinking of when you were talking about this, or?
It's funny because I'm gonna well all right, let me something that I liked. I liked the overhead shot when they're running through the field and the tall straw or whatever. That I thought was a nice shot. Um, the shot where Dan Stevens gets knocked down by the 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 plant guy, the guy that is guarding the plant and feeding it.
Yeah, I think in the movie it's the titles his character's name is the Grinder, which I thought was
Okay.
intimidating at best.
There's a shot there where he gets knocked down and he's just kind of laying on his side, it's clear that they put the camera on its side. And my only problem with that, because I thought it was a neat shot, is that it's just framed absolutely perfectly.
Hmm.
Whereas I think I would have tilted it maybe up a little bit or something, because I mean I guess you're supposed to be seeing it from the way the guy fell on the ground. I would think that it would be a little off. It wouldn't be absolutely perfect.
Wow, that's some pretty specific film direction there.
But I did like it, so I was like, "This is
Okay,
neat."
that's good. I like
This
that
is
you're
neat.
getting into nitty gritty now. Like you're thinking about how you would do this yourself. That's the important thing.
Yeah, well, I have such an aesthetic, an eye for these things.
Well, it sounds like it. It sounds like you're developing one. So,
uh, but I mean, I didn't get a chance. I usually like to watch these movies twice.
yeah.
But I didn't get a chance to see this one again, which I regret, because of course, it's the ones that I didn't like as much. Those I saw a couple times.
Right. And the other thing I think that really stuck out to me was the performances in this, and as we were talking about earlier, it goes to the fact that the material was there for people to work with. I mean, there were also good actors in this film. I think that Michael Sheen has already proven himself plenty of times.
Hmm.
I think that Dan Stevens is a really interesting actor to watch. I mean, he's been in some very interesting projects at this point now, and and I think that he was playing a complicated character. They're both playing really complex characters, so it was fun to watch them go through the motions of doing that. It was fun to actually watch them deliver on that. Um, were there other people that stood out to you, or what would you? How do you feel?
Performances across the board. Dan Stevens did a great job. And yeah, I guess I'm trying to think. Was there anybody that I didn't like? And I'm not. Yeah, I think that there were. I think the performances were across the board strong, and I think that speaks to some strong direction.
All
So
right.
yeah,
So, what's our final verdict?
I recommend it. I'll recommend this one.
Yeah, I'd say I think it's worth checking out. I don't think it's going to be the movie of the year for me. It sounds like it might be for Dave. It's hard to say, but
Yeah, it's definitely in the running.
yeah, it's definitely in the running. There you go. I mean, I think it's definitely worth checking it out. So, kudos. We have one that we both feel pretty strongly about.
I don't know if we've been doing this in every episode, but I like it. What? How does it rank of the four?
Oh, well, I think in terms of being the most well put together and easiest to follow, it's probably at the top now.
Hmm.
I think if I was going to put them in order, I'd probably put Tag second because it's the most weird and interesting one.
So tag second. I thought tag would be first for you.
I'm gonna put well in terms of watchability. I'm gonna put this one first.
Okay.
Tag is a very interesting movie that has some interesting things to say, but it's not as watchable. I think so.
I
I
agree.
will put that one after this, um, and then I think by default I have to go Terrifier and then Drifter.
Yeah, I think I have this. I have them ranked the same way. I think I liked Terrifier more than you did. Um, but
It's interesting. I've had some interesting thoughts about it since because I don't know if you've been following the actor who played Art the Clown on Twitter much.
yeah, I have you. But definitely talk about it.
Yeah,
He's
I
also
mean the guy. I really want to talk to him more about his role actually in a way because he's such a really strong-willed progressive, very very vocal about his distaste for the current administration and on other things, other conservative issues, and it's like. Well, this is a really interesting two sides of a coin scenario where you play a very sadistic and, as we discussed, sort of misogynistic clown.
oh, not sort of. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and then on the other side, you're this incredibly like outspoken, progressive-minded, nice person. Really, ultimately, he was very nice. So yeah, it's actually kind of made me like the movie a little bit more. I have to say, it's not really a fair assessment, but
he tweets as Art the Clown, though, right?
he tweets as Art the Clown, but he also tweets as I mean, if you read the actual actors.
Is it the at and at is the at Art the Clown or is it his name?
Well, it's his name. He does both. There is an at Art the
Okay,
Clown, and there's also an at his name, which I think is David something Thornton. I'm blanking on it.
that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting.
David Howard Thornton is his
David
name.
Howard Thornton. Yeah, I mean I like the fact that it adds in some ways a texture to this that I makes me rethink about it a little bit more. Because I'm like if this guy took on this role, there's something else going on there maybe a little bit that's kind of interesting. So
I mean, you're gonna get if anyone ever watches this, which I think you're safe. Uh, some people are gonna take serious issue with you letting an external factor, but
I
it
know,
does.
I
I
know.
mean, it does make it. It gives you something else to think about. I don't
It
know
gives you
that.
something else to think about. And also, I mean, what are we comparing it to? We're comparing it to Drifter. And Drifter,
That's,
Drifter's okay. It's not like I would. It has issues, but it's not like I think it's a terrible film. I just think that it had some terrible
I'm
editing.
the guy took a really good cut at it. Sometimes you swing and you miss, but it was a good swing. It was a good
Good
swing.
swing. There you go. That's
um,
nice.
I mean, he's got a new movie. We're gonna have to get around to that one eventually.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll have to
what's
talk
it
about that.
called? Murder.
Murder for
Uh,
Hire.
Monster Party. Monster Party. That's
Monster
it.
Party. Also
So I
fun.
mean, let me tell you something. I should have been able to make such a bad movie when I was. I mean,
Right.
this is 2 years before that, so he
Right.
was 28.
I mean, well, I mean, like we cut on it, but like there were some really interesting. I mean, he did like set up shots and some really interesting shots. Like he did go out of his way to make an actual film. It wasn't just him putting a camera down in front of people and being like, "Go." Like he actually
Yeah,
did craft
yeah.
it. It's just unfortunately,
There was
the
some,
payoff. It dragged. It dragged a
there's
lot,
a
but that's okay.
stylistic element to it that
Yeah.
yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Maybe I need to sit down and watch it a third time to no.
But you could be the first person to ever watch it 3 times,
I'm
except
sure.
for like the editor, and I assume him. You'd be the first,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, to watch it 3 times. So yeah, what else have you been watching recently? Anything?
I did see Bad Times at the El Royale.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that last time. So what?
I liked it a lot.
Okay, good, good.
Um, and all the people that you would think would be good were good, but Chris Hemsworth, let me tell you,
Yeah.
great
Huh.
in this movie. I
In
mean,
a comedic way,
um,
or in a? I mean, well, first off, is it comedic or is it not comedic? The movie in general.
not in general. It has its moments, but
Okay. The trailer made it seem quirky in a way that was like maybe
yes,
it's really more
quirk.
funny than not, but it's not really.
There's definitely some quirk.
Okay.
But I mean, I look forward to you being able to have a chance to see this whenever that is. Because I think I don't know. I mean, it's difficult for me to say you're gonna like something, but I think you'll have stuff to say. Put it
Yeah.
that way. I do recommend that.
Oh,
And for me, that's definitely also in the running for a top 10. My top 10 is going to be, I got to start seeing some movies, or it's going to be like 10 out of 30 or something,
oh, the horror. Imagine that if you'd only seen 30 movies in a theater this year.
or just 30 movies from this year.
I have to assume that you've seen more than 30 movies this year. That would be an
I have to
all-time
sit
low
down
for
and do
you.
math, but
I don't know. Well, I mean, next week you're going to be kicking around. You could probably pump
yes,
out 3, 4 a day.
I could. I mean, I got to convince the family that that's acceptable. But my dad's usually game
Yeah,
uh, to go out and watch something.
there you go. We could have a special dad of Dave
Yeah,
guest call in. He could come in on the show.
yeah,
Get him
yeah,
on.
yeah. What about have you seen anything?
Yeah. Although like as always, you're the one that actually goes out into the world and sees movies in their proper setting, and then I end up staying in and seeing things on smaller screens. Although tragically, my TV broke over the last couple of weeks, and then I broke my laptop, so I've had a lot less opportunity to watch
So
stuff.
what are you just watching stuff on your phone now?
I'm down to the smallest possible screen. I'm relying on friends and family.
Like, what are you doing this on? What's
I don't know what's going to happen. I want to see what happens. But
are you using your phone? You look good. Is this your phone that we're talking
no,
about?
no, no. This is on my just normal desktop, which has become my TV, but it's not
Okay.
set up in an area that's comfortable for TV viewing. So it kind of it doesn't necessarily help me watch things. But so having said that, I got deep into a series on Netflix called The Haunting of Hill House, which
Oh, I've heard good
maybe
things.
have you watched it at all? Or have you?
I haven't. I've heard good things though.
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, it was very addictive in a way, but also it's a pretty substantial uh, series. And we were talking about how this movie Apostle benefits from having good character development and some meaty characters to really get into. The Haunting of Hill House really is a story of a fractured family. And it has supernatural elements, and it kind of ratchets up the scary qualities as it gets further into the series. But ultimately, it's about mental health, and it's about these people that are suffering from lots of different sort of problems and crises. And all of them, the writing and the acting in it is superb, and everybody kind of everybody gets really deep into the meat of the issues. So that helped a lot. I mean, I think that you have to stick a few episodes in if you're going into this thinking like, oh, it's a ghost story in a traditional sense, and I'm going to see some quick scares and whatever. You have to wait it out, and you have to stick with it
Hmm.
before things kind of start heating up. If you do, it's really worth it. I was into it because I thought it had a great sort of atmosphere to it, and a great kind of general sense of dread happening in it. Um, but I also had to wait around to actually see where it was going. I wasn't even entirely convinced it would really be a supernatural show of any sense. And I've talked to other people I know who have said like they started it and then it was just too depressing for them to continue. You know,
Hmm.
I've talked to people that were like, this deals with too many actual issues that I don't really want to think about or handle right now. And it's interesting. It's sort of like, you know, to me in a way, this is a horror show, but it's really talking about, well, you know, what is real life horror like? It really is maybe like a sense of hopelessness in characters and people. You know, it deals with, I think, horror in a very human way, and also deals with horror in a very supernatural way. So it's, on the whole, I really highly recommend it. And I think it's been getting a lot of positive reaction from people as well. So
And that's Mike Flanagan.
yeah, yeah, that's right. I think.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, I I think the only one that I haven't seen is he did Gerald's Game. Did he do Gerald's Game?
Oh, did he? Yeah, no, I've never checked out Gerald's Game. I should check that
I
out.
didn't. I've heard it's great, and I have not seen it. But I did like the Ouija movie that he did, uh, and I liked Hush.
Yeah, right. He did Hush. That's right.
Um, and he also did. Was the one with the butterflies? I haven't seen Oculus either. I've heard Oculus is good,
I've also heard about Oculus.
and I think I might be wrong, but I think it just left Netflix, and I
Huh,
missed it.
go figure.
He
Nobody
did, yeah,
likes us.
Ouija, Origin of Evil. He did Gerald's Game. He did Hush. Oh, Before I Wake is the one I was talking about.
Ah, Before I Wake.
I liked that one
I got a
also.
lot to catch up on with this guy. I mean, this really kind of this to me like put him over the edge in terms of people I should definitely be watching more of.
Hmm. Yeah, no, did you see Hush?
Yeah, Hush is great.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll talk about it at some point. I don't know.
sure. Yeah, no, it's right in our wheelhouse. Maybe we just do because I think I could be wrong. I think Oculus is gone, but I think Before I Wake is also Netflix. That may be a Netflix movie? Am I
Oh, is
right?
it? Okay, I'll have to circle back to that and see. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, Dave. I think it's time to call it an evening.
yeah. You were. This was a valiant effort for you, man. You
I appreciate that. I appreciate the acknowledgement. What I do for the fans, you know, and the show in
all five
general.
of them,
Yeah,
two of which are us.
yeah. So, till next time, good watching. I'll see you later.
Thanks, guys. What about you? What do you?
No, I'm with you. I would probably go aliens. I mean, what's the point of doing what's the point of doing farming? That's what it comes down to. Like, you know, it's a hard life if you're going to be out there in a cult in the forest or the woods or whatever, trying to make it to the pagan gods, sacrificing, you know, occasional visitors to try to get your bees going. It's just not worth it. You gotta put all your money on aliens. I mean, that's where the future is.
Now, do the aliens like drink blood or anything? Like, are the?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility, right? I mean,
I mean,
I've
I've seen
seen
how the plant thing works, and I don't doesn't appeal.
I think. I mean, like either way, I think you're willing to gamble on aliens drinking blood if there's a spaceship that will take you away at some point.
I mean, it's better than staying here, I guess.